Jon Lord's rockin' organ solo from Deep Purple's Black Knight. Oh, it has always excited me, perhaps even more than his rock moustache. So let's get straight into it. If you've done all your jobs, like thumbed one in softly, subscribed to the channel, told me what I'm getting wrong in the comments, and even perhaps visited my Patreon, let's get into it. So the song is in E, but this section is where it goes to the A. So there's like 12 bars of A, and I think of it in 3 sections. The first section, Jon is doing like octaves with the right hand. Now, I'm no organ player, I'm a terrible keyboard player, but from what I can gather and what I've seen other people do, throughout this solo, Jon is using his left hand just to hit the keys. I don't think it even necessarily has to be the right notes. Just very staccato hits, a bit that give an effect a little bit like on guitar, those muted notes. It's a percussive effect in between what he's doing with his right hand, the melodies and the octaves. So the first section is basically octaves with some A notes and muted notes interjected in between. So that's the first part. And I'm just playing open A strings and then an octave of C notes. So 3rd fret on the A string, 5th fret on the G string, back to an octave of A notes. So open A, 2nd fret on the G string. Twice. Then we move that up to D. 5th and 7th frets. Do that twice. Then the next section, instead of having, we've just got one muted staccato note in between. We're just working our way up the A minor pentatonic scale. So D to E at the 5th to 7th fret, still octaves. Do that a couple of times. Then E to G up to the 10th fret, 10th and 12th, a couple of times. Then I'm doing an A5 chord up at the 12th fret, 12, 14, 14. And then he reaches up with his pinky and hits a high E note, which we can do 21st fret on the G string. Now to do that, to make that clear, you really need to let go of the other notes of that chord, because if you let that 5 chord sustain, you won't hear, can't really hear it. It blends in too much. So what I'm doing is letting the pressure off my 1st and 3rd fingers there. So I've only got my pinky remaining and just using my middle finger there to save getting rid of the pick. But if you're really quick at that, you can do it that way. Swap it back. The next 4 bars, Jon does this wonderful sweep up the keys up to a really high A5 chord, just all the way up the top. So we can emulate that by just, so I'm sliding up on the G, B and E strings, 14, 17, 17, trying to cover the whole neck, and then a little 1 fret slide to get the 2nd chord sound. And the 3rd time he goes a little triplet there. So that part is 17th fret on the B string to 15th on the E, and he does that twice, but the 2nd time he's also got a D note underneath it, so we can get that on the 15th fret of the B string. Then there's a little kind of triplet run down where you can't really pick the notes, just kind of stumbling down the keys. So the way I'm doing that is just a rake back across the bottom 3 strings and then playing A, G, 14, 12 on the G string. The next section is pretty much all 5 chords over the muted note in between. So the first one, A5 again, I've got an A note, 14th fret on the G string, E note, 17th fret on the B string, but it sounds like he's, you know, sliding in off that G sharp note into the A note. Now for this section, I'm swapping to a hybrid picking action, using my pick to hit the muted A string and my 2 middle fingers to pluck that chord. Then he goes down to an A5 chord, an octave lower, adds an F note to that. And that's another A5. It's the same as that. I'm just doing it at the 10th and 12th frets because it's easier to get to from the 7th fret. So it's the A5, the G5 again, and then the full A5 here. So 7, 9, 10 on the D, G and B strings. And for this, because I've got 3 notes I want to hit, I'm swapping to using all 3 of my spare fingers for the hybrid pick. So for this last passage, it's all that chord shape and the muted A note in between played with the pick. So 3 fingers, hybrid picking, muted A note. So I'm just going to tell you where my first finger is rather than detailing every finger because it's the same shape. And I'm using my spare middle finger here to mute the strings where I need to keep it from getting too messy. We start off on a G5 at the 5th fret, 2 of those, back to the A5 at the 7th fret, back to the G5, B flat 5 at the 8th fret, back to the A. Then he goes up to the C5, so I'm going to the 10th fret, back to the A5 twice, back to the C5 a third time, D5 twice, and then sliding straight to the E5 at the 14th fret. That's the whole last passage. And that is the whole thing. It's great fun. It's nice and short, just 12 bars of A, and probably different than you'd ever play your guitar licks. So it's always fun to learn this stuff, to expand your range of improvisational skills. Please head on over to the Patreon if you want to throw me some support, or check out the tabs and a heap of other lessons. And give me a like and subscribe, and I'll see you next week.